Oh, thank you so much for that prayer, Mark, and all of you and those of you at home for getting on your knees and, or at least in your heart, that posture of humility and desperation for our Lord. It feels so good. Thank you, John. It feels so good to come to church, to tune in online or here in the building and begin to get a sense together of God and not just the chaos in our world right now. You know, He does have the whole world in His hands. We learned that early, didn't we? And He's got that. God is bigger than the news, than the struggle, the ugliness of racism and anarchy and violence and all the layers of the COVID crisis and just the political agendas. It's endless, it's confusing, it's polarizing, it divides us and sets us against one another. And then we come and we look away from it to God. We come and we look away and pray and we realize that He can take care of that. He can bring a victory and He can use us. Now, that helps me start the message for today because not only in our nation, but in each one of our lives, we have a battle. We have a need to grow, to be saved, not just ultimately when we go to heaven, but also to be saved from sin each day. We have a battle going on, trying to get better, trying to be more and more like Jesus. There's a struggle there that can leave many of us discouraged, many of us guilty. And if we think it's all on us, we begin to get that burden on us. It's similar to if we let the burden of our nation and our world right now get on our shoulders. We need to give it to God. And we need to realize right now the Lord is the one who's in charge of not only correcting our world, but you and me and us as a church and our families, people we know and love. Now, all that to say, our message this morning from the book of Proverbs is a very practical subject, and it's on correcting one another. You heard me. Correcting one another. Giving and receiving correction. Rebuke, whatever word you would like to use. Suggestions for how to improve. Now, I want to say from the start, please do not apply this sermon to me. I don't want you to just apply this in your own life to each other, but not to me. I'm just kidding. And you might be wanting to say the same thing, and we all feel that way, right? We all feel like you got to be kidding me. But the Proverbs, and God wants to speak to us because this is a very important issue. I was trained early as a pastor to do premarital counseling, you know, the young couples that are in love and maybe never had a fight. And during premarital counseling, we're supposed to pop the bubble and make sure they don't have any surprises once they get married. And so one of the techniques I was taught by my senior pastor was called a fault chart. It's an assignment you give in the first session that they do and bring back for the second session. Simply says, list 3 faults of your fiancé. Give a recent example of each fault and share any helpful Bible verses. I stopped doing it after about 6 months. Because we'd come back in, we'd process the assignment, I'd have to bolt the furniture down in my office. One of the partners would start in sharing something that sounded very typical. I'm like, yeah, this is good. That's a real one. And that's in a lot of marriages, so this is good. And the other person is just turning red slowly up their face. And it always led to a fight. And I just couldn't handle it, so we stopped doing it. The fault chart. What I learned was young couples were not very good at giving and receiving correction. They knew their faults, they had the ammo, but they weren't good at processing it positively with one another. So they're learning early, you just don't go there. And of course, that's not right, that's not good. I remember counseling a man, an older man, who's had a grown son, and he came in very heavy in his heart, very depressed. And his son had shared with him that he was gay. And the father was about to write a letter expressing to his son how he felt about that. But he had this heaviness, like deep down he knew it wasn't going to be a good experience for him or his son. He deep down knew that letter was not going to work. It was going to be part of the problem, not part of the solution. It was going to just be more of the dysfunction in the situation. And so as we were talking about it, and he was honest with me, and the Lord was there, we prayed, and the wisdom came together, and I could see his face starting to smile, and I could see the heaviness starting to lift, because we both discovered, don't write the letter. He already knows what you think. He's grown up in your home. He knows your religious convictions. It will do no good except maybe feel like you've done something, get something off your chest, to put all that down in a letter and send it off to him. You don't need to do that. That's not what God's asking you to do. And the heaviness you feel because God is not empowering you. The Holy Spirit is not helping you do that particular attempt at correction. It's going to blow up in your face, make things a lot worse. He believed me. He realized all I need is pray for him and ask that God will help him come back to his true identity and his true potential, and then I'm going to love him unconditionally. And I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep a presence in his life that I hope he'll return to. When he heard that, it was like, oh, that's doable. Oh, I feel the Spirit helping me with that. It was such a cool thing. Hey, have you ever gotten a letter like that from someone that should never have been written, that hurt you? Have you ever written a letter like that and it blew up in your face, and something you were trying to fix or help with somebody you love dearly turned into a year or two that needed healing, an estrangement? It's a very common thing for us. The key statement here, if you're taking notes, is we don't like correction because we do it poorly. We don't like correction because we do it poorly. So we say, you know what, I can't have that conversation with someone. I love them, and I'm related to them, or I work regularly with them, and we're both in the same company that's failing because of this particular problem, or we're in the family, and they're just making family gatherings horrible, but I can't say anything. You can't say anything to so-and-so. Or we say, I'm sick of it. I don't even look in the mirror anymore. I don't want to hear any constructive feedback from anybody about me, okay? We reach a certain age, we're no longer, caring about trying to bring our A game all the time and getting better. And so it's easy for us to say those things. And we can admit, too, that in many of our relationships, we are nowhere near what we're about to learn. And it will take a good while to bring it in. But I want to tell you, God wants to speak. We're not here to just talk about where we are. We're here to talk about, let God talk about where he wants to take us. And our relationships in health and function should include regular giving and receiving of correction. That's what we're going to hear. That's tremendously valuable. The Proverbs, God's going to speak to us through the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is in the Old Testament. This isn't about Jesus. Once you get to Jesus and the gospel and the Holy Spirit and all the change and the becoming like Jesus and the being saved out of the world and being made more and more like him from glory to glory, it gets even more compelling. But now we're back in the Old Testament. This is much more simple and basic, but it's still very strong and powerful. That if we're wise and we want to be good at dealing with realities of life, skillful at that, then that we're going to love correction. We're going to listen. It's going to go deep in us. And if we don't, we are fools. All right, it's a tremendously valuable thing, even if it's not been a good experience for us. So here we go. Correction. First of all, as we begin to look at the Proverbs from the Old Testament, correction is very valuable. Listen to Proverbs 25, verse 12. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. And Psalm is just saying, when that comes together, somebody willing and able and skilled to correct and wise enough and love somebody enough to go there, and then somebody who's wise enough to receive it, when those two things come together, one's been welcomed, the other's been given skillfully with respect or whatever else, when that comes together, he's like, man, that's like expensive jewelry right there. Tremendous value, beauty. It's a good thing when we receive and offer correction successfully. Proverbs 27, verse 5 and 6. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. So we're in a relationship, we're like, man, I love you, and if I really loved you, I would say this to you, but I don't want to offend you, and it's going to be a difficult conversation, but you obviously have a blind spot, and this would make your life so much better, and so I'm just going to conceal my love. Proverbs says it would be better to give that correction openly. That would be better in a brother, sister, employee. You love them, you're in a regular relationship with them, your fates are intertwined. It's better than hiding your love and saying, I just can't go there, to give that openly. And the problem is we have to learn to do that skillfully. Proverbs 28, verse 23, he who rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with the tongue. He who rebukes a man will afterwards find more favor than he who flatters with the tongue. If, I love encouragement. That's my mode. I think it's so important. If you don't encourage, you can't correct. If somebody doesn't know you believe in them and you're not telling them encouraging things, you would never be able to correct them. So don't hear me saying encouragement is not important. But if that's all you do, if all you say to your children, all you say to your coworkers, all you say to your friends, your Christian brothers and sisters is just, hey, you're great, you're wonderful, everything's cool, you're just the man, you're the woman. If that's all you ever say is the positives, then that's really flattery. Why? Because it's not proportional to the person. There's a lot of weaknesses. They're not Jesus Christ. They haven't arrived. And so they're in process. There's a lot that they still need to work on. So if all you're telling them is positive, then that's not proportional. That's called flattery. If that's you, you will not be as honored. You will not be as appreciated. You will not be as loved as somebody who's figured out how to say the truth to help them get better. If I'm in your life and I have figured that out skillfully, you will like me more if I help you progress than if I just tell you about the progress you've already made. Hey, you're so great, you're so great. You know what? I figured out a way to help you, and it doesn't offend you and turn you off and crush you, and you're better, and you look at me, you're like, oh, I appreciate you so much more than somebody who's just flattering me. Okay, so we begin to see the value. See, one of the greatest joys in life is that sense of progressing. I was with one of my grandsons in Virginia recently, and he's almost 2, and Lynn and I only see him every few months, 2 or 3 months, and so we see big changes, and one of them was he was just learning to walk when we were last there, and so anything would throw him off balance. Well, this time, he is so proud that he can go outside and walk up on the little tree roots. He goes in the yard, he goes up on the tree root, and he looks at me like, and then we go on a bridge in the botanical gardens, and he goes up the bridge, down the bridge, and he turns around and wants to do it again. Up the bridge, down. Why? Because he's showing, and he's so fascinated that he can balance himself on an incline and a decline. And he's not just showing off, he is enjoying the thrill of progressing. That's what life is all about, that sense of personal progress, your life getting better, the quality of your life. There's a tremendous thing. That's not just toddlers. That's true for adults. We still love to progress. There's few joys like progressing. And as Christians, I don't even want to go to the New Testament yet, but my gosh, we have so much potential to do that. And a big part of that is being open to the correction that God has put in the people around us to help point the way to that experience. And so if we're willing to give it, and if we're welcoming it and willing to receive it, then it speeds up that progress in our life. There's no greater joy. See, good parents, sticking with the toddler for a minute, good parents know how they tell their children 2 things early on. First thing is, we love you, and the kid gets it. It's like, my mommy and daddy love me. I'm important to them, and they encourage me, and they notice me, and they love, and they physically, the whole thing, and they love me. We love you. The second thing, you must obey us. It's a whole different thing. So you can be really good on the you're great, way to go, but not so good on, hey, that thing you're starting to do? That thing, that willfulness, that sinful, selfish, you're the sin of the world, whatever. We got to correct that. We got to teach you to obey. Not just that we love you, but you must obey. So if there's a parent that can encourage but not correct, what happens to that child? That child, right? That child, we're all familiar with this, will be loved by their parents but not loved by most people as they grow up. Because it's intended for that child to have a training from parents who love them so much and have so much patience and belief in them that they're willing to go to that much tougher level besides just, you're great, you're great, you're great. Compliments is much easier to give than just to get into their life and say, nope, got to correct you. And you figure it out. Parents do this all different ways, but the way to tell it's working is, are you correcting that behavior young and successfully? That's crucial. But here's the reason I bring that up. And it's the next key statement in our notes. We never stop needing that correction. It's not just toddlers. Especially those of us in Christ. We have that tremendous potential. Many of us are 40, 50 years old, and we're 2 or 3 years old in the Lord. Or, we haven't been actively realizing and growing and progressing, so we're much younger in the Lord. So we never stop needing, even as adults. And if all our friends and our family and our coworkers and our brothers and sisters in Christ, if all they can tell us is positive things, because that's where our relationship is with them, then the result is we have an overinflated view of ourselves. Okay, now, the Apostle Paul says on that, he says in Romans 12, verse 3, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. It's hard to think of yourself with sober judgment if no one ever tells you anything that's corrective. If all they ever say is, you're great, you're wonderful, isn't that amazing, you're good, you're wonderful, compliment, compliment, compliment. It's hard to have a sober, accurate view of you. Everybody else has a realistic view of you, but you don't of yourself, because nobody ever tells you anything negative, anything that would help you improve in your life. Pop that bubble, reduce that head, and take away that overinflated view of self. We need that correction regularly just as much as a toddler. Why are we shattered when somebody says, hey, I got a little pointer for you how you might be able to improve your life? I'm not sure you see it, I don't know how long you've been doing this that way, but let me just be a mirror for you and say, hey, what about this? And then they nicely suggest a way that we could get better in our life. And we're like, what? Excuse me? Are you judgmental? Are you negative? What, are you critical? Don't you see I'm a perfect 10? Don't you realize that you should just praise me all day and night? Where is that coming from that we're so offended and shattered when somebody suggests some way we might improve? Because we have an overinflated view of ourselves. We say we're in progress. We say we want to become like Jesus. That's a huge way to go. When somebody comes and comments how that might be happening, here, let me give you some signals, and maybe the Lord's speaking through me to how you could become more like Jesus. Oh! We're not getting the overall picture. I've arrived. Just say positive things. That's where we are in our relationship. Man, that's not functional. That's not healthy. We all need it just as much as a toddler. And so if we don't get correction regularly, if we haven't welcomed that, cultivated that, made that possible and easy for our friends and our family, then we're going to be very much like that toddler that's hard to love. Other people do have a realistic view of us, and they see things. Let me ask 3 questions, okay? And you be honest, and please know I'm asking these to myself, but I'm going to ask them to you directly, okay? First question is, are there things that you don't see that would make your life better, but you don't realize them? Are there things that you don't see that would make your life better if you knew them? Answer? Okay. Good. I'm encouraged that there are some people that said yes. We got some work to do. Okay, yes. Obviously, yes. None of us, it's a team project. And so God has put those ideas of how we can get better, not just in our head, but in the head of those, minds of those who are around us, a team effort. All right, second question, do the people around you see those things that you don't see that could make your life better? Yes or no? Yes. Third question, are those people around you, family and friends, are they comfortable to tell you those things that would make your life better? And it wouldn't be like offensive or negative or blow you away, or you'd have to get over it for a year and heal your relationship. Can the people around you tell you those things that they know that would improve your life? Answer? It's convicting. I wrote in my notes, for me, most likely no. The more of a leader you are, the more that you seem to have it all together, the more you're on a pedestal, the harder it is to tell you things that are obvious to others. So I would say the answer to that one, for me, and I think for all of us, is like people are having a hard time. Just like we know we can't say things to so many other people. You just go through your life, go through your family, your friends, your associates, and you think, man, I couldn't tell them this, I can't tell them that, but I see it all the time. If they just knew that, it would help them. I can't say it, I can't say it. There are actually people like that about you. They're like, I wish I could tell him, her. I can't. And it would be money if they could. If they could tell you, it would be money. They love you more than anyone, and they're always around you. It would be the most relevant, custom-made, tailor-fit wisdom for your life getting better if they could. It would be money. So we go on with the Proverbs, and we see, it's really important. It's really valuable, even if we're not good at it. We go on, and it's talking about different reactions. Proverbs 12:1 says this: "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid." Now, I know you're not supposed to say that word. I'm sorry, kids. It's in the Bible. Okay, I'm sorry. You're not supposed to call somebody stupid. But all four of my go-to Bible translations use that word. NIV, NASB, NLT, and ESV all use the word stupid to translate in Proverbs 12:1 the Hebrew word ba'ar. Doesn't that word sound like duh? That's the original word, and they translate the word. They said it means brutish, dull-minded, and like an animal, which is pretty much stupid. And what is it? If you hate correction, God is saying you're stupid. Now, I don't think I didn't have a bad week. God didn't have a bad week. It's not that he's mad. He's like, "You stupid children." No. I think he's looking down, and he's like, "Man, I see how valuable this is. I'm trying to speak to you, to your friends, your family. They all love you, but you're like, I can't hear it. I don't want to hear any more constructive feedback. I don't want any negative comments. Can't deal with it in my life. Oh, I can't tell so-and-so that even though they need it, and I love them, and it's a huge blind spot. You can't go there. Could you get better? Could you learn how to do that? Have that conversation?" No, I just can't. I tried once, 10 years ago. It won't work. And God's looking down. He's going, "You are stupid. You say those things. That's stupid. That is not your brightest moment. That is so dumb." And he's trying to get our attention. He's not frustrated. He's just saying, you could be so much smarter so quick. You just let the people love you tell you how you can improve. You could be so much smarter. And so for you to go around and not be receptive to that or think that would be horrible, God's like, it's not your brightest moment. And he's trying to get our attention. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It can be deflating. It can reduce our ego, but that's all good. You can still ignore it and do the same things or you could get better. So it's a good thing. It's often from the people who love us the most. Proverbs 9, verse 7 and 8 says, "He who corrects a scoffer," or it's the word mocker, or really it's the fool, "he who corrects a scoffer gets dishonor for himself. And he who reproves a wicked man gets insults for himself." Excuse me, who is the person that doesn't receive correction? Oh, the scoffer, the mocker, the fool, and the wicked man. That's the person when you go and you try to help them and you try to make some suggestions, but it's not like encouragement and it doesn't go well because they send you back with 5 negative, 6 excuses, and 7 reasons why you're wrong. That's not a wise reaction to correction. Goes on, "Do not reprove a scoffer or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man and he will love you." So if we're skillful with dealing with the realities of life and all the things the Proverbs say about being a wise man, one of the signs that we're wise is that we love people who are courageous enough to correct us. We actually love that. Oh, I love you that you took the time and tried to make me better. And I'm so glad for encouragement, and I know you believe in me, and at the same time, you took that risk. We prove whether or not we're wise or foolish when we say, "I love you, and I don't hate you," in our reaction to correction. Proverbs 17:10 says, "A rebuke goes deeper into one who has understanding than 100 blows into a fool." A rebuke goes deeper into one who has understanding than 100 blows into a fool. So you got this picture of the wise man receiving it, taking it seriously, applying it, getting better. And then you have the fool over here. You can hit me with it 100 times, I still won't get it. It won't even come in. You could hit me with it like a blow, like a whip, and I still won't get it. That's a fool. Now, which are you? When it comes to correction, are you taking it seriously, welcoming it, applying it, getting better? Then you're wise. Or are you like the fool? They can hit you with it and you'll never get it. Proverbs 15, verse 31 and 32 says, "Whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. The one who heeds correction gains understanding. I was thinking this week, how would you like to get a degree from Harvard? And like a doctor's degree from Harvard, and it would be, in my mind, I'd be thinking, no, it's too expensive. No, I be too hard, be too difficult. I don't know if I'd even get in. And it's like, oh, you don't need to get a degree, something much better than a doctor's degree from Harvard. Just give the people around you permission to tell you how you can improve. And you will sit with the wise. You will be known as a wise person along with the other wise people. That will be you, because you'll get a degree that is so helpful, so relevant. Just the things that are hanging you up, that are making life difficult, that are keeping you from succeeding. Everybody sees it, they can't tell you. Give them permission, make it easy, welcome them, be hospitable to that. Let it be repeated over and over, and you will be a Harvard doctorate. You will be a wise man, a wise woman, if you could just receive that. The Proverbs continue. The one who regards reproof will be honored. That's Proverbs 13:18. You're honored. Proverbs 10:17. The one who is on the path of life heeds instruction, but he who forsakes reproof goes astray. So if you're saying, I can't hear it, I can't say it, then that's like a sign in your life you're drifting from the path of life. If you're able to receive correction and process it positively or give it, those are each time a signpost that points your life to where you really want to go, where we all really want to go. Every time we receive, our response to correction determines the path that we're on. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Guys, I think about chopping wood in the heat, okay, 90 degrees. This next week's going to be really hot. Let's say you're out there with a bunch of wood and you got one axe. It is worth the time to sharpen that blade. And every time we receive correction or give it, we are keeping our edge. We are keeping our blade sharp in life. It's so worth the time and effort to not be dull. We're all going after things. We're passionate for things, but how effective are we? Are we chopping? Are we productive? Are we accomplishing and experiencing what we believe, what we hope, what we want? And what will help us is sharpen that blade. Who does that? Someone else. Who is in your life that you say there's that friction, and it's like, ugh, I don't know. They say some things that make me uncomfortable. They don't always agree with me. And there's things that we just see things kind of different, but we're friends and they're close enough to interact with me. Hey, maybe they're sharpening you, making you better. That's what one person does with another, not one person does with God all by themselves. We all want God to lead us, speak to us, sanctify us, make us more like Jesus. He's like, yeah, and I'm giving it to the people in your life around you. Give them permission. Bring them close. Let them speak, and you will hear my word. Let them in your life, and I will make you more like my son. I will make you more effective through that relationship, through that giving and that receiving of correction. And so we hear all of these verses, and it leaves us with a conclusion. My goodness, there's even more negative verses for those who resist correction, how you eventually break and go beyond repair. You experience irreversible scars. But we'll stop. Here is the conclusion. We must learn to give and receive. This is a key statement. We must learn to give and receive correction. We've got to learn it. Some people seem like they're intuitively able to do this. They're just naturally, there's only a few, but they seem to be able to do this and get away with it. And it's like, how do they do that? I don't know. There are 2 books that describe this I highly recommend. One is Crucial Conversations. I've read it 3-4 times, gone over it with staff in this church and our church in Virginia Beach. And it just teaches you how to have tough conversations with people who are close to you that tend to get emotional. There's a lot at risk, and do that successfully and not have it blow up in your face. There's another book called Crucial Accountability, where you might be in a company and you're not even the boss, but the boss is unethical and you've got to confront him. You've got to correct that behavior. How do you do that effectively when you're not the boss? How do you do that when it's your parent or it's your sister or whoever it is, I don't know, in your life that needs correction, and you can't just avoid it. It's a serious issue, and then you admire there's certain people that are able to do this, and somehow they know how to do this, and then what I'm saying is we all have to learn to be like those few people that know how to do this. And the book studied these people and studied what they do and made principles and said, look, this is how it's done. This is how anybody could do this successfully. And I can't give you the content of all these books, but let me give you my best shot. I'll give you my favorite points in just 5 minutes. Ephesians 4:15 instructs us to speak the truth in love as we grow together to our full potential as a church. Ephesians 4:15. We're growing together, and it says you got to speak the truth in love. Okay, so that's a winning combination. Say the truth. That's painful. That's tough. That's deflating, but it's what somebody doesn't see that's going to help their life. And I got to say it. I got to speak the truth. But I have to do it in love. I have to do it with an atmosphere. What is the atmosphere? What is the feel of it? What is my manner, my attitude, my facial expressions as I come in to speak the truth is equally important as the truth itself. So speak the truth, but do it nicely. Okay, what is love? What does it mean to speak the truth in love? The key word is respect or kindness. When somebody's being corrected, it takes a hit, and their ego is hit, and it's a ding, and so if you're coming in, and the way to make that easy is to have tremendous respect for the person that you're correcting. Our spirit, our tone should say, I like you. Hey, we're talking about this particular issue, and it's tough. I get it. It's tough. It's maybe a blind spot for you, and maybe you're feeling that kind of heavy, and it's painful for you. This is not your favorite day or your favorite moment. I might even be your favorite person right now, but we're going to talk about this. And as we do, I just want you to know it's nothing compared to how much I enjoy you, and I'm privileged to be in your life and believe in your full potential. And I'm not frustrated. I'm not angry. I'm not disappointed with you. I'm excited to be in this conversation with you. But I just want you to know that I see you as very important, and I love you. That's huge in the atmosphere because, I'll just be honest, if that isn't what is the atmosphere, what is in the air? What is in the atmosphere? Frustration. Let's take a parent. Parent looks at a child who's been misbehaving, comes home from a long day at work. Wife says, you got to talk to your son. And so you sit down with them and you're like, man, I come home to rest. I got to come home to this. You are stressing me out. Would you just please behave? Because you're a burden to me. And of course, we never said those words, but that's what the kid see in our eyes, feel in the atmosphere. It's that negativity. It's that I look at you, you're a problem child. And when you're on the receiving end, that just makes it really difficult to not be discouraged, to not be defensive, to not feel judged. So that's where let the atmosphere be love, and that would include respect. Hey, I'm so glad to be with you. I'm so glad I believe in your potential. And you know what? We got to figure this out, but I believe we can. I believe that you will. And this is the best thing I get to do. I love being your dad. How can I help you? See, that's love. Not just truth, not just say the problem. The other key element of love is not just kindness or respect, but it's also gentleness. When somebody has a sin in their soul, Jesus said it's like a speck in the eye. Remember in Matthew 7, he was talking about how can you get the speck out of your brother's eye if you got a log in your own? Obviously, he's making a different point. But he is saying that a fault or a sin is like a speck in the eye. It's very sensitive. So you come to somebody, you're like, hey, I think that I might be able to help you correct something in your life. You're reaching into their eyeball. And they're going to be like, natural reaction is defensiveness. Why? Because it's sensitive, it's tender. And so one of the key qualities is not just respect. I believe in you, I love you, I'm here, it's not a burden to me, I'm not disappointed, frustrated. No. I'm not judging you. No. But the other quality is I'm very gentle, soft touch. Okay, because then they'll let you near them. And if you're rough, if you're, judgmental or pushy, shovey, they're going to be extremely protective and defensive. So those are the two things that I thought of for speaking the truth in love, respect and gentleness. But what about speaking the truth? Okay, well, I'll be loving, Dean, but don't you have to say it? Don't you eventually have to say it? Yes. So what about speaking the truth? What's crucial for that? Well, the best way to start is ask questions. Don't start with a declaration. Start with a bunch of questions. Why? Because you probably talked about it with other people, but not them. You need to hear their side. Well, we've talked about it, in our family, and we talked about it with the other teachers, or we talked about it with, whatever. I thought about it in my own head, but I have yet to hear because it's awkward now. We're finally in the conversation, and I just thought I'd like to get your side. Why has this been difficult for you? Talk to me. So the key is just say, hey, let's bring up the subject, not preach a sermon. Let's just, what about this? Just throw it out. Now we're in the conversation, and it's two of us looking at the problem, not me preaching, me correcting, me lobbing. I've already made up my mind about you, and I'm going to come tell you. No, I'm going to first ask and get insight, because, even if you're completely wrong, and that's part of your problem is you're completely wrong about it, I need to hear that because I need to know how to address it, how to get you from there and help you undo all that incorrect thinking. So start with questions. And the key statement here is make the corrective experience, make it a dialogue, not a monologue. Okay, so this is the worst example, and that's where I get in trouble. If I'm a preacher, I'm also an employer, and if I go to my employees like I do to you on Sunday, it's disaster. Monologue, emotion, no, disaster. They're looking at me like, Dean, stop cheering me on, and please help me understand how I can get better. It's a whole different thing. Don't preach the sermon. Don't be in a monologue. Listen, get more insight, and then figure it out together. It's like God will give us wisdom as we have this discussion together. I'll throw my stuff in, but I'm listening to you because I have this whole idea, but I know it doesn't quite fit until you talk back. And when I hear you now, we're going to make it fit. Now it's going to be custom fit for you instead of just my thing I've all made up, this big speech I come in. And that turns out to be much easier to do. Just have the conversation, and then you can figure it out together, and God will give us wisdom. So that's much easier than having to come up with a big speech and try to convince them. We all just did personal reviews, annual reviews. That's me as the senior pastor by the elders. Elders also and me do Craig Harpenter's review. He's the superintendent of the academy, the Fairfield Christian Academy. All the pastors and directors, we just did reviews with them where I sat and an elder with me sat with each one individually after they answered key questions. We answered them. We had that conversation together. Correction is given freely in these situations. I just want you to know. It's given freely. And for me, when they sit down with me, I'll just be honest with you, what really helps is when the elders look at me and they're not all pointing their finger at me. They're like, okay, Dean, you're responsible for everything. So all the problems in the church are now your fault. And so we're going to point our finger at you and say, why aren't you like all the other senior pastors? No, they don't do that. They look at the challenge, and we look at it together, and they get to know who I am, and they custom fit the challenges around me, and they come around where I'm weak, and they strengthen and take up the work around me. And it makes it so much easier for me when I know we're all looking at the challenge, and they're not all just looking at me pointing the finger. And that gets back to just have a conversation, a dialogue, not a monologue. The other thing I'd say when you're telling the truth, when you're speaking the truth, is focus on the solution, not just the problem. Don't think you're the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ and all this stuff and an amazing person and God using you wonderfully and just able to do magic when you just say what the negative is, when you just say what the problem is. That is something anybody can do a dime a dozen. The wonderful thing happens when you begin to help, when you begin to say, look, here's a solution that I think, and I'm willing to help. I'll offer myself as a part of that. How can I help you? My parents called discipline and correction help. That's how they referred to spanking when I grew up. And so I can still hear my mother say, Dean, do you need some help? And right now, I'm tingling in certain places when I hear that. Remember her voice saying that. That's what I know that help means. But they got it across, she got it across to me. That's what we mean by correction. We mean not just pointing out your faults and punishing. We're like, how can we help you do the right thing? And so if you're correcting a sister or brother or employee or a family member or whatever, then imagine those people that need correction saying to you after your speech about all the problems, they're saying, can you help me? Would you please help me? Okay, I get it that you could state, I see more, I could tell you more problems, but you're in my life. Is there anything you could do to help? And that's the magic. That's the Holy Spirit. Then that's like, oh, that's why we're having this conversation. It's not just point out the problem, focus on the problem. It's because together we're going to find the solution, and they're going to get better, and Jesus is going to make us more like him. And we're going to progress, and that's why we're having that, and that's what we can bring. So focus on the solution, not the problem. And then finally, when we're receiving, that's all about giving the correction. When we're receiving, and I've been saying this, the key statement is don't be defensive. Don't be. If you value it and you want it and you want to hear it and you want to hear it regularly from the people who love you and you want to hear it from God through the people around you who love you, then you got to make that comfortable. You got to make that positive and pleasant for them so they'll come back. And if they come to you and you tell them 4 reasons why it's not right or true or they don't quite get it, don't require it to be exactly right. Don't pick at it. Don't quibble with it. Don't criticize their opinion. It's not going to be exactly right. Listen for what God is saying. What is the kernel of truth? It's like, hey, God, I know, wants me to get better. How is he using this person who's obviously putting themselves in a very difficult position, and they love me enough to go there? What is God trying to tell me? I'm not going to require it to be exactly right. I'm not going to argue back and be defensive. This is good advice. Just don't argue. Listen for the kernel of truth. What is God trying to tell me? Resist the tendency to be negative and listen. The other thing is ask for more. Say, you know what? I really appreciate that. And I think what I'm hearing is you're saying this, this, and this. They're like, yeah. Hey, is there more? I mean, like, did you just tell me a little bit to see how I'd react? And now that I'm open and it doesn't blow me away, tell me all of it. Tell me the whole thing. Because they're probably sending a certain amount and to see, and then just say, I love this. I want to get better. God is speaking to me through you. So could you tell me the whole thing? Because I can only get better. I know that's not easy, but that would be something on us. Are we wise or are we foolish? If we love it and we want to get better, we say to somebody, thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to not just give compliments, to actually say something that can make me better. Are you sure you've said everything? Here's what I know, too, and let me tell you all the things I see. Now, does that make it easier for you to fill in and keep talking and tell me the whole picture? This is the way we should receive correction, and when we do, we'll be able to hear it, and God will speak, and we'll get better. Well, as we come to communion and our close, I want to say the focus of all this is not on our friends, not on the people who are leaders, bosses, parents. It's not on them. It's on God. He's our ultimate. Jesus Christ is the ultimate one correcting us. And I say this because it's his strength that will make it successful, and it's his forgiveness that takes away the guilt that gets in the way of our failure and all of our need for improvement. I was reminded of my basketball coach coming up through high school, my varsity basketball coach. He would, in the practice time, he would gravitate over to me in a drill. And we were just shooting, and he would say to me, he would stand and watch me shooting while all the guys are shooting in the whole gym. And he comes over and looks at me, and he says, Dean, I can still remember this, like yesterday. He's like, you should shoot the same way every time. He goes, you're shooting different, you're practicing 5 different shots. It's going to take you a lot longer to get good. So pick one of them and shoot the same way every time. And I was hitting swishes, but he was picky with me like that. And then we get in a scrimmage, and he's like, hey, you weren't hustling on that last play. What's up? You didn't guard the guy. I told you about it. You're supposed to do this. You didn't do it. We get in the locker room at halftime. He's like, what is your problem, Dean, in front of all the guys? And I'm like, what? This is deflating. And then we go out on the court in front of all the people in the stands. He's even yelling, getting a red face, saying, what's up with you, Dean? Started hustling. What's your problem? And I'm thinking, what is this guy? I love this guy. I still remember his name is Ed Willis. Tremendous guy in my life. I still think about him. Why? He made me better. And when I thought about it, I thought, he doesn't spend much time trying to correct the bench warmers. So if he's looking at me, if he's spending energy trying to coach me, make me better, that must mean I'm going to be a starter or at least be crucial in the game on Friday night. See, and it's that way with God. If he's trying to correct you, that means he wants to use you. means he loves you, he has plans for you, and he's trying to make you better. So he can count on you in his work and his mission. And it won't just be for you. He'll then pick you up and use you and make you, a blessing to help others progress. And so it's a positive thing because of God. And we don't have to be discouraged because he's doing it. We don't have to feel guilty about what we're not because he's like, I paid for all that. Jesus, this is where we take communion. And he's like, never forget that I died for your sin, your lack, your failure. That's why I'm always on the positive page. Jesus is like, let's keep talking about just moving forward because I paid for the past. Stop talking about what you're not, what is past, what is negative. I died for all that. So I'm always on the page. Let's tweak it. Let's get better. Come on, I'm helping you. I'm training you to get better. So I am coaching you right now, and I can do that. And I hope that can remove discouragement and guilt. Both of those will keep you stuck and keep you from being able to progress. The joy of receiving and giving correction and progressing and helping others progress goes back to Jesus Christ dying for us, dying on the cross, take away our guilt. And that's how much he loves us and wants us to get better.